What is up, guys? It is Capital Coasters, and welcome back to another video. And today I'll be bringing you guys a new style video. And this will be kind of a coaster fight, or coaster war style video. And you have seen some other people do this. And I decided to kind of do an attempt on this on my own. So the way this will work is I'll go through several different categories, and each one will be worth a certain amount of points, 1 through 5, based on how important I think the category is. And so if a category is worth like 3 points and one coaster wins that category, it gets the 3 points, and the other coaster won't get any points, and then no coaster with more points in the end wins. So yeah, for my first comparison, I'll be doing Millennium Force versus Fury 325, two very famous Giga coasters, two really fun rides. So let's just get right into it. Alright, so for the first category, we were going to be comparing the height. Now this will only be worth 2 points because I don't think most of the stats are that important. So Fury 325 has a height of 325 feet, obviously, and Millennium Force has a height of 310 feet, so Fury is taller, so we'll be getting the 2 points for this category, even though there really isn't much of a difference, but it will be getting the 2 points. Alright, so moving on to the speed, this will be worth 3 points, because just like the height, it's not as important as other categories. So Millennium Force reaches a max speed of 93 miles an hour, and Fury reaches a max speed of 95 miles an hour. So it's barely a difference. It's only 2 miles an hour. In fact, you won't really notice a difference when you're on the ride. But Fury is slightly faster, so we'll be getting the points for this category. Alright, so for the length and duration, this category will be worth 4 points because it is, in my opinion, probably the most important stat. So Millennium Force has a track length of 6,595 feet in a duration of 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And Fury has a track length of 6,602 feet of track, making it the longest steel coaster in North America, and a total duration of 3 minutes and 25 seconds, fittingly. And even though Millennium Force, in my opinion, feels longer, the drop to brakes time, Fury is a longer ride statistically, so we'll be getting the 4 points for the length and duration. Alright, so talking about the drop, this is going to be the first category just based off preference or opinion. This category will be worth 4 points because it is fairly important. So Millennium Force has a 300-foot 80-degree drop, while Fury 325 has a 320-foot 81-degree drop, and they feel pretty similar. However, this might actually be kind of controversial, but I'm actually going to give the points to Millennium Force because even though Fury's drop is bigger, I think I just like Millennium Force's drop a little bit more because of the setting. It's right next to Lake Erie. Even if Fury's drop does last longer and might give like better airtime, I just thought that the setting gave Millennium Force's drop a bit of an edge, even though they are pretty similar. Alright, so for the next category, we'll be talking about the airtime, and Millennium Force has 3 main moments other than the drop. It has a nice big floater hill right after that first low to the ground turn that takes place inside the tunnel. It's got a floater ejector, I guess it's got a mix of both, hill in the middle of the ride, then a speed ejector hill at the end of the ride that flies right past the station. And Fury has some 3 really good ejector hills at the end of the ride, along with a good floater moment into the brake run. And it also gets some nice airtime on some of those bank turns, including the treble clef, which is really fun. So I will be giving the points to Fury just because I felt it had more airtime, and the airtime was overall, I guess, stronger. But they both still have some pretty solid airtime overall. Alright, so for the intensity, this will also be worth 5 points, and I will be giving this to Fury just because I found overall it was just more forceful. Just in general, I found the back-to-back turns in the first half were more intense than like Millennium's overbanks. Even though I felt that Millennium kept a better intensity in that ending portion, but I thought that the most intense moments on Fury were just more intense than the most intense moments on Millennium. And those back-to-back turns are pretty fun. So I will be giving the points to Fury, just because I did find it was just more forceful overall. Alright, so for the pacing, this is going to be worth 4 points, and this is definitely going to Millennium Force. It keeps a consistent, really fast pace throughout this whole ride. I'd say it keeps a good at least 50 miles an hour through this entire coaster. Even on some of the slower moments, like going over the top of that big AIRTIME hill, and the top of that, I guess somewhat slower, the top of that first overbank, even though it's like super tall. You don't slow down that much, and you keep a really good pace even to the final brake run, like that last little portion. You're going like 60 miles an hour, I think, almost. So that's really good. However, Fury is not the same story. It definitely slows down after the treble clef. There's a turn, and it loses a lot of speed on it. You slow down to probably 30 or 40 miles an hour, so the end of the ride you're kind of crawling through, and there's a helix that makes it really slow. Even though the first half's really fast, the second half's kind of slow. So Millennium Force keeps a really fast pace through the whole ride, however Fury does not. So that's why I'll be giving Millennium Force the points for this category. Alright, so for the smoothness, this will be worth 3 points, because I don't think this is actually one of the most important categories. So for Millennium Force, it's actually really, really smooth. It is older than Fury, and it is a Intamin, so I guess I would expect it to be rattlier, because B&Ms are usually a bit smoother. It's an Intamin that's 15 years older, but honestly, it's really not that much of a difference. It does have a bit of a rattle. Going around some of those turns, you can kind of feel it shake, and you can even kind of hear it, but it's really not that bad. And honestly, Fury's pretty much butter smooth. I found it smoother this year than 2017, so that's kind of interesting. Didn't have any sort of rattle at all. While Millennium sort of did, even though they're both pretty much nearly perfectly smooth, I do find that Fury was just a bit smoother, so it will get the 3 points for this category. Alright, so for the restraints, this will be also worth 3 points, because I think it's about as important as smoothness. And you may actually disagree, but I'm going to give this to Millennium Force. I found the Intamin T-bars just better than the clamshells. They're a lot more open, a lot smaller, so they give you more room just to enjoy the ride and stuff. Even though they're both fine, I don't really care or find that the Intamin T-bars are like awkward like some people say. They're honestly fine. Both are good. The clamshells are still solid, but I do think that the T-bars are just overall better, and I do like that they're more open and smaller. So they're both pretty good, but I do prefer the ones on Millennium Force. Alright, so for the final category, I'll be talking about layout, and this will be worth 5 points. And I think these rides both have their advantages. Fury has a lot of rapid-fire elements that come at you back-to-back, and some really good bank turns in the first half, and then some great AIRTIME hills in the second half, which are really fun. And Millennium Force has a good mix of overbanks, a lot of ground turns, and AIRTIME hills spread out throughout the ride. It's a very long layout with very drawn-out elements. And this might be very controversial. It probably will be, but I'm actually going to give this to Millennium Force just because I found the layout just felt a lot longer. The duration just felt longer, at least the drop to brakes duration, as I mentioned earlier, because I think it's like a few seconds longer, but it feels a lot longer because the elements are just a lot more drawn out. So just the ride itself feels a lot longer, like the overbanks are much longer than Fury's rapid fire turns, and the AIRTIME hills are like more drawn out, and just everything about it's more drawn out. So they both have their advantages, but I just found I liked the layout on Millennium Force a bit more, and the AIRTIME hills were more spread out, so I kind of like that. Even though it is a bit more repetitive, I just like the more drawn out nature of it that makes it feel longer. So yeah, I do prefer Millennium's layout a bit more, even though they're both really, really fun. So as you can see, Fury 325 is our winner, winning 22 points to 16 points. And I think they're both really solid coasters. They're not like my favorite rides ever, but I think they do what they do pretty well. They're both solid Giga coasters. They're, I guess, the two most probably iconic Giga coasters. Even though they're not the two best, but they're both really good. So I think there's a good reason why They both got, the certain amount of points that they did. Both of these do, like, some things better than the other. However, I just think Fury does a lot of things better than Millennium Force, and that's why it overall won. But they're both still pretty fun coasters, and they're definitely both really solid, and they both make my top 20. So yeah, that'll be about it for my first ever, I guess, like, coaster fight, or whatever you want to call it, style video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.